My guest has served this community for nearly 2 decades in law enforcement. She was the first female law enforcement officer in Laclede County to be promoted to the command rank of lieutenant, and then to the position of chief deputy, holding the rank of captain. Since 2017, she's been the lead investigator for the sheriff's office in nearly all major cases. She's known and respected among her peers for her relentless pursuit of the truth. She has a unique ability to connect the dots in complicated cases. Her work has brought justice to countless victims. She has pieced together complex child abuse cases, property crimes, and death cases, earning her the Missouri Investigator of the Year award in 2019. Not only is she recognized in work in Laclede County and Lebanon, but she's often asked to help with other counties with major cases. A former sheriff once told me after she helped solve a double homicide in his county, she is a rock star. Often, when I was the sheriff in Laclede County, sheriffs from other counties would tell me, I need a Casey. I'm David Millsap, and my guest is Captain Casey Pitts. Casey, I know that I've seen you in thousands of interviews with witnesses and suspects and victims, and you're not comfortable in this type of form that you're in the box now to be able to sit here and talk to me. This is a conversation that I want to have with you, much like the conversations, hundreds that we would have in my office when you would spread out your lunch and talk to me. One time you said in December at my retirement party, you said that you had found your passion as an investigator. Tell me what that means.
When I first decided to be a deputy, I had no idea that I wanted to do investigations. Like, that wasn't even something I'd ever considered. I just figured I would just be a deputy and, take calls and pass along any investigations to the detectives until you came along, and then you assigned me as an investigator, and I realized I was naturally nosy anyway. And so I just really liked kind of figuring things out. Like if there was an issue or like a burglary or something, it became easier and easier for me to like put things together and just figure out like where things had went, suspects to the crime.
When you were growing up in Conway, did Casey Pitts, the teenager, ever envision herself as being in law enforcement?
No. I actually got in a lot of trouble when I was a kid, so I never thought I would be like on this end of it, because I had contact with law enforcement when I was younger, and it was not good contact. So no, I never did consider it. It wasn't until I had my first son. He was about 4 years old, and I realized that I had a friend who had just graduated the academy, and he was working at Dallas County Sheriff's Office, and his wife had come to me and said, have you ever considered doing something like this? She's like, I really want to go to the Sheriff's Training Academy this year. And I hadn't considered it, and I thought, sheriff's deputies made more money than what I was making at the time. I was working at the hospital. At the time, someone who was in my life, who is no longer in my life, told me they didn't think I could make it through the academy, and that really lit a fire under me. And I was like, I'm going to try it just to see if it's something I like. And so I ended up applying, got accepted. At the time, the sheriff was Richard Wrinkle. He was one of my patients at the hospital, and he had approached me about an opening that they had when I graduated.
And you talk about that kind of lit the fire under you and your personality over the years since I've known you since 2017. That idea that you've got a hurdle to get over seems to drive you a little bit.
Maybe, yeah. If it's like impossible, if someone else thinks that it's impossible for me to do or overcome something, it makes me want to do it more.
You worked for Richard Wrinkle. You started as a process server, then went to what we call to the road as a deputy. And you were there for a long time before you became an investigator. And there's a lot to learn working the streets. And you know, as great a community as we have, and we live in a tremendous community that supports law enforcement, there's an underbelly to this community that only people like you and I have got to see. What was that like, learning about the things that were going on in this community and dealing with that, and what did that mean to you and help you in becoming a detective?
Well, I was so young, like I was 24 when I started on the road or started serving papers. And even then, like I would serve like civil papers, warrants, things like that. And then if there were other calls going on, I would still help the road guys, you know, be their backup or whatever they needed. And it was like the first year I kept serving papers that had to do with like domestic violence. There were a lot of child sex crimes, things I had never realized that I guess was so prevalent here. I'm sure it is everywhere, but you just don't see it on the news daily. But I was serving papers regarding those cases like every day. And you would pull up to the houses and serve the papers to either the victims or the suspects or, you know, whoever you had contact with that day. And it was very sad. It was very eye-opening. Like, it just makes you think about the things that are going on that nobody really knows about. Some of them are really horrible things.
And I think the other thing, and this is a lesson for anybody, no matter what your profession is that you got to pay your dues. You know, I used to do recruiting at the Springfield Police Department. We would go to a college, and I'd have some college student come up to me and go, well, I want to be a policeman, but I really don't want to be a regular policeman. I want to be a homicide detective. Well, there's a maturity, a level of gaining experience that's so important when you're out there catching calls in a patrol car.
Yeah. So I think every job, even before I was a deputy, helped kind of form my ability to do my job today. Like, so I said before that when I went to the academy, I worked at the hospital full time. So while I was there, I worked at the emergency room. I also dispatched ambulance, and I worked there for 7 years. So I got a lot of experience in like different areas of them. I also worked in home medical supplies, and I did mapping for our drivers. So I knew every road of the county and some of the surrounding counties because I had a lot of patients that lived around there that were on oxygen or just had different medical needs that we would deliver things to. So like all of that helped prepare me. And I worked in retail. I worked as a waitress. So like I got to know how to talk with people and deal with people and like be personal with them, you know? And then, so when I became a deputy, I already knew all the roads. A lot of the same people that we see as deputies, we also saw in the emergency room because, you know, they didn't have adequate health care, and that was just an easy way for them to get health care quickly. And so I already knew kind of the same people. I don't know. And all of those jobs gave me some type of knowledge on how to do things that I even currently do.
One of the things that in major cases, and I saw this with you more than any other investigators, is that you were able to develop a bond between yourself and your victims. And that's really an important element in trying to get cases solved. We often see on television the sexy thing is to get a confession out of a suspect, but it really starts in getting your victim to open up to you, especially in crimes like child abuse cases, sexual assault cases, or domestic violence cases. Kind of walk me through how you learned to develop that bond.
I usually try to get like a pattern of like history, I guess, with the family, just to kind of see how things developed, the way they turned out to where they, you know, would call us because something happened. I want to see like how they lived, who they, what kind of people they surround themselves with. Just every detail that I can get, I want to know. And a lot of times whenever I have like a child victim, I keep really close in contact with like their guardians, whether it's their parents, grandparents, foster parents, because I think it's important for them to know like what's happening with the case. And a lot of times they'll recognize things that are a little off kilter that I wouldn't notice because I don't live in their household or see the child every day. So I don't know their regular behavior patterns. And like, they're able to tell me like when they noticed a change and what that change was, and if there was a particular person around whenever that change happened. Those are things I wouldn't know. And so I have to depend on them for that information for the investigation.
And so I kind of want to go back to that first question I asked about your passion, because I really feel in 2017, when we first started working together, we got inundated with property crimes.
Yeah.
And that's when I first saw you connecting the dots in complicated cases. But I think I started to see this growth of your passion is when you really started dealing with a lot of the child crimes that we've dealt with, and that you seem to have a real passion for making sure that those kids' voices are heard.
So I'm a mother, so that probably drives a lot of it because I have 2 kids myself. And so anytime I see a child that needs help in some way, whether they need someone to understand them or believe them, because sometimes they will speak to people, but it's not the right people because they don't take them seriously or they just think they're making a story up. I just think it's important to believe someone when they say something's wrong, especially children or like elderly or someone who just can't really help themselves. You have to be that person for them, like their voice, you know. That way they're heard, and hopefully you can stop whatever is hurting them.
And it's no secret, in 2020, your family was touched by a violent crime, a homicide, and a homicide that I worked along with Landon Swino. And I want to talk about Landon a little bit because it's not just the Casey Lynch show there. He's been a very big part of the success of the sheriff's office and investigations. But your father-in-law was murdered. Did that change in any way kind of the way you looked at investigating and dealing with families of people that were hurt or in violent crimes? Probably.
So when that happened, I was 9 months pregnant, and at the time, COVID was also happening, so I was at home because I was getting ready to have my baby, and it was quite shocking to me. And so after that whole situation happened, Landon did such a good job. Landon Swino, the detective, he did such a good job at keeping me up to date on things, like telling me where you guys were in the investigation. He told me when the suspect had been identified, and they, you know, for me, it was eye-opening, I guess, just because I'm on the other side of that. So usually I'd be investigating, and I would be, it would be my job to tell, you know, the victims or their family kind of what's going on. And I felt like I was always good with keeping up with them and everything, but this really made it to where, okay, if I'm doing an investigation and there's several of us, you know, working on it, whether it's a homicide or another violent crime, someone specifically has to be assigned to talk to the family, whether it's every day or every couple days. It's just very important that they know that we're working on it, you know, because sometimes I think he kept up with me really well, but even if a day goes by and you don't hear anything, you just kind of wonder what's going on. And I just think it is important to keep everyone updated.
See, and I thought I noticed a change in you. In November of 2020, we worked a homicide up in the Eldridge area where a decapitated body was found. And you had just come back from maternity leave.
It was my first day back.
First day back, and we caught that homicide case.
Yep.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But that was a 5-month investigation. And you kept in contact with the victim's wife throughout that. And I just wondered if, in some ways, what you learned as being a victim, and every member of the family's a victim when a homicide like that happens, that kind of drove you to make sure that you kept in contact with her. And I can remember at the conclusion of the case, she sent you flowers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was almost identical. I felt like, to me, like to what I had went through, because she was also pregnant. She was getting ready to have her baby. And it just felt like the same. I guess we'd went through kind of the same type of situation. And I guess that probably affected me more than what I realized or acknowledged, just because even now I keep in contact with a lot of my family members of different, crimes like homicides or child crimes. We still keep in contact every now and then, just have each other's phone numbers, or we're Facebook friends or something, So I guess, that probably did change more than what I realized.
In that Nathan Young homicide case, and we worked that case for 5 months, and this is what I think a lot of people on the outside don't see, is that you live with that case. Mm-hmm. And I don't recall, I don't think you worked hardly any other cases during that 5-month period. Mm-mm. Because every day we were grinding on that case. Mm-hmm. For 5 months, and literally hundreds of interviews, probably thousands of hours. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk a little bit about the digital forensics now that come into play, but you live with these. We have to live with these cases, don't we?
Yeah, that weighed on me for a long time, just because there's so much data. Like, you can send off it for information, but the worst, I won't say the worst part of it, the most time-consuming part of it is going through the data once you get it all back, and then putting it together, like a timeline of the data, and then you fit it together with the timeline of everything else that occurred, and it's very time-consuming. But once you get it all together, it just all lines out, and it's a nice picture, paints a nice picture, but it took months and months. And I remember messaging you at like 3 a.m. I'd be up at, feeding the baby or whatever, and I'd still be up working all night long on putting stuff together and doing a timeline book. I think I did a handwritten timeline book.
In fact, you took
Who
my
does
book.
That?
If you remember correctly, I had my notes and on. You go, I need that book.
Oh yeah.
And you took my book.
I did take that. I forgot about that.
But in that investigation, and you talk about the data. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't want to give away trade secrets necessarily, but cell phone data, Facebook, mm-hmm. jail calls, all those types of things. And then we were able to track the suspect all the way to the homicide scene. Mm-hmm. But that took a long time to put all that together.
It did, yeah. We had probably 20 different forms of communication, whether it was surveillance videos, like you said, Facebook, Messenger. We were able to get some location data from Facebook. There was multiple phones used by different persons in the case. There was, of course, then you have like all those phone records, and we did some other types of search warrants for different data related to the phones, but probably 20 different types of data that we had to put together. And during that time, it was daylight savings time on that same weekend. So that kind of messes up. Some of the data would come in with the right time frame, some wouldn't. It would be an hour off. And so we had to like go through and make sure all that stuff was properly aligned, I guess.
And of course, was in the business long before you ever got in the business. So I cut my teeth investigatively on sitting down and talking to people to get information, not necessarily having access to all this type of data that helps put a case together. But I think you earn your stripes, so to speak, in your ability to go in that interview room, what we call in the box, and talking to people. And I can remember early on in that investigation, within a couple of, I think the second day, maybe the first day after the body was found, Landon does an interview. He gets a different read than you do on the suspect, and you saw something that he said or a reaction to a question that put us on a path. Mm-hmm. You got to be able to read people and talk to people.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember just mentioning something regarding a detail that nobody knew, like it wasn't public, and only me and the murderer would have known, and the fright. It was a moment of fright, and I just knew so that we were on the right track. So,
where do you think you learned? And I guess maybe that was that maturity as you go into profession, is learning by talking to all kinds of people. But how many times during our 8 years that we worked cases together, or I watched you work cases, you'd come in and go, they're not telling the truth. You just have the ability to see that.
I don't know. I can't describe it.
And even not only in criminal investigations, but we would interview somebody for a job. And I can remember us interviewing a guy that wanted to be a deputy, and there was a question I think I asked, and he gave an answer to, and when he walked out, you said he's lying, and that's true.
I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It's just a feeling. I don't know.
But it's a skill that you, and I don't know that you learn. I think you learn it, but it just, some people have it, some people don't, I think.
I think after a while, because I've done so many investigations now, and I always, anytime someone tells me something, I always take it as the truth. But the evidence will lead you one way or the other. And after a while, I think you just recognize the pattern of how they say things, how their movements are, the things that they're doing in relation to what they're telling you. And because of the pattern of the other cases showing the ones who didn't tell the truth, I think you just kind of pick up on that, maybe. I'm not sure.
And I want to go back to something you said in that Nathan Young homicide, and all the hours that we worked, is that ability to stay focused on those types of cases is really hard. And a colleague of yours one time told me that when Casey gets you, you're got. People don't realize the immense amount of detail that has to go into a case.
There's a lot of things that you have to do in order to make it a good case. The timeline's a big deal, I think. And some people don't do timelines, but I think it makes it to where, the victim's family can understand it better. I feel like I understand it better if I put a good timeline together, and it's something good for the prosecutor to use to show the defense, kind of what we've gathered, and have it all like nice and tidy together. So for me, that's a big deal. And then to show maybe patterns of inconsistencies with stories, that's helped us a lot in relation to the evidence we've collected to show, maybe they're not saying the truth, for an alibi or whatever, but yeah.
Patience is a big deal in investigations. When you work the road as a deputy or a police officer, you're dealing with that event right then. And often you have to move at lightning speed.
Yeah.
I often tell people that want to be criminal investigators, it's like crappie fishing. When you think you're reeling too slow, slow down. I know sometimes the public gets frustrated with that, but you can either have a fast investigation or a thorough investigation. Sometimes you can't have both.
Yeah.
But you have to have a great deal of patience.
Yes, you do, because unless you're working it, you don't fully understand, but you could do an interview and it throws your whole idea of what could have occurred out the window, because this person has new information that you didn't know even existed. So if you hadn't have interviewed them, and if you would have made your decision based off of what you had prior to that, it wouldn't have been accurate. So you just don't want to chance those things. You just want to make sure that you've talked with everyone that you can, collected every evidence, piece of evidence that you can, and look at it all thoroughly before you, decide what's there, I guess.
And the other part of all of that patience, and sometimes the public doesn't have, is now driven by social media. And we know in the last two homicides that occurred in Lebanon and Laclede County, a lot of social media stuff, and
Yeah.
people talk about, well, you're not being transparent. I used to tell people, we're going to play our cards close to our vest, whether you like it or not, simply because we owe it to the victim of that crime. So there's a lot of things you can't tell, a lot of things you know that you'd love to come out and say,
Yeah.
but you can't do that.
No, you can't. And I honestly don't read social media just because I don't want it to affect how I work my case. I don't want to feel rushed or feel like I have to please other people. I want to make sure it's done just right. I don't want to have to appease people who are being negative about it in the comments and stuff. But really, I feel like most of the people commenting, in the past I've looked, and they're not even from here. They're not even from Missouri, let alone our county. So they really have no basis for what they're saying other than just rage bait, you know?
Right,
So it's not
right.
even a real opinion from someone who lives here. I feel that we have a great community here.
And they don't have
do
a vested
understand.
interest in any of that.
No, the people,
Right.
no, I don't think so. No.
We've talked about homicides and those types of cases, and there are, you know, when I was a lieutenant and commander in Springfield, and my area was in charge of homicide, and I'd get a call from a lieutenant at 2 a.m. that was working the road and said, "Hey, we've had a homicide, but it's going to be easy." And I used to tell them there are no easy homicides. And just quickly, one last thing on that is go back to the Nathan Young case. That case, that timeline was so important, and when you put it together and you connected all the dots, it just made sense. And the probable cause statement that we have to prepare for the prosecutor, I'll never forget that night. It took us 5 hours. You're at home writing the probable cause statement. You would email it to me at the office.
Mm-hmm.
And it took us at least 4 or 5 hours to put all that together.
There were 6 drafts. It started out at 12 pages long. I think we whittled it down to 8, maybe, just because we had so much information in there and we had gathered so much information, but we didn't want all the information in the PC.
Right.
Because it was just too much, and who wants to read 10 or 12 pages? Nobody. But yeah, those were the good days. Just, you know, working late at night and trying to get that done. And yeah, I felt very accomplished once we finally sent up our final product.
And the other part of that people don't see are the hours, and we kind of talked about that. But the last homicide case that you and I worked was in July of 23, I think. I think we slept maybe 4 hours in 3 days.
Yeah.
And so when people hear about these homicide investigations and homicides that occur in their local community, it's not a come in at 8 o'clock and be finished by 5 and take a 2-hour lunch.
No.
You're on the run. That first 48 hours, there is no sleep.
No, and you're doing neighborhood canvases, who knows how many interviews you're doing. You're writing search warrants, you're trying to get data back, because you only have a short time to get back data from phone companies if it's urgent. Like especially if you think that's going to help you locate evidence or locate a suspect. Yeah, you have very little time, and you're just running on coffee and hope that you can find everything that you need, you know?
And as soon as you finish a case, and a lot of people don't see this, we turned in the probable cause statement, and I want to say it was March 20th of, would have been 21.
We turned it in before noon, or right at noon.
Right at noon, and at 12:30,
Yeah.
we got a call about another homicide.
Hadn't even got our lunch yet.
Yeah. So it's on the run again.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make this sound like it's, it's not East Central LA or the South Side of Chicago, but there's always something.
Yeah. It's
There's
not always
another fire.
homicides. It's
Right.
always, there's something. There's always other violent crimes or things that we're working to other than homicides. But yeah, those were 5 or 6 months apart, but it took so long to work the first one, the Young case, that we were already to the next one.
Started the next one. So I want to talk about other crimes and real quick, and I want to talk about child abuse crimes. And again, I see this passion that you have with your victims. We had a case that you worked for almost a year with two brothers that were involved long-term in sexual abuse of children, over 20 plus victims.
Yeah.
We started with one, and it just kept growing.
Yeah. I think we're up to 27 now.
Mushrooming. How do you, again, I would see you interview a victim, or we would use Kids Harbor for an interview. It'd be another victim chasing down another lead, going back several years. Those are tough cases.
Yeah, they are. I don't know of any one thing that kept me interested or kept me going, or I just think, having good support at the office. I had good, Landon Swino is a great partner. I've had him since I started becoming detective. Well, shortly after, I think, is when he was assigned detective with me. And so just, he would be encouraging. At the time, I think Corey Wilson was detective, and he was very encouraging. Sometimes you just need that encouragement to keep going, because it is hard to go through those cases. And there's only so many times you can sit and hear about someone's worst day, worst week, worst month without, feeling that darkness. But you just have to, I have a really supportive family, good leadership, and it just keeps me going. I'm ready to go.
It's interesting in that case, because you build those child abuse cases. Often it's the interview process that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
But in that particular case, and these were two brothers, both who've pled guilty, that we went out and did a search warrant, and you found physical evidence that no one thought would have existed. And we found that, and that really made that case, or solidified that case from a DNA perspective.
So a lot of the reports were from a historical event, so it could have been anywhere from a month back or years. It went on for years, and at least 15 or more years. And so getting physical evidence of something like that, I thought was going to be impossible, but I kept interviewing. And then we ended up finding out that one of the victims had been victimized 2 days prior. So we went and we were able to find the clothing that the victim was wearing at the time, and it happened to have a very valuable substance on there that solved the case and proved that it did occur. Of course, they're going to tell you it didn't occur, the suspects, but we were able to prove, the lab was able to prove that it did occur with how the victim had told us. And we were able to, there was a pattern, because all the victims had similar stories, similar ages of when it would start, similar patterns of different things that was specific to those events and to those particular suspects. And it just all came together, and we were able to pull it together with that one piece of evidence. And I almost didn't get it. I almost didn't go because I was exhausted. And I just think to myself, every time a case is kind of difficult and it's taking time, or I'm really tired, I'm like, remember that specific detail made it all worthwhile. Just keep going and make sure you collect what you think, even if you don't know if it's valuable. Just collect it, and we'll look later, and at least we have it. So it can't be destroyed, can't wither away or get lost. We'll just keep it because we know it exists now. We'll keep it and we'll look at it later.
I'll never forget the phone call when the evidence came back, and you called me and you were so excited, and you said, I hope I quote you right, current me needs to make sure that I tell past me, no, it should be past, I want to make sure the past Casey always reminds the future Casey to do this.
Yeah. Past me took care of future me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's true. I do remind, like I still to this day, anytime there's anything, I'll take a swab. If I think it's there, I'll take a swab just in case. And it's helped me out more than it's hurt me.
So we've talked a little bit about that passion. We've talked about some of these cases that you've worked. One of the things that a person in your position is that this business is always evolving, like any other business.
Yeah.
One is forensically, things have changed. I got in the business way before DNA. And then, that became such a major part of any criminal investigation. Now it's DNA, it's the data footprint that you leave out there. You have an opportunity to attend a forensics academy. Tell us a little bit about that.
So it's the National Forensics Academy, and it's in Tennessee. And it starts in January. It goes through March, so it's 10 weeks. My husband's not thrilled about having to take our son to school every day. But I am hopefully able to go to this, but the tuition is quite expensive. And so I'm trying to find a way to fund it. That way I can get in. My name is on the list. So as long as I can get the tuition, then I'm able to go. But it's supposed to, so it's 10 weeks long, and they teach anywhere from like crime scene investigations. They do arson investigations, and this is all these investigations revolve around death of a person. So some people may think that's weird that I'd be interested in that, but it's something that I really am passionate about because I feel like I can learn so many more things. And I think if we know better, we do better. And I just, these classes are like, I think the best forensic classes that you can get in the United States. It's they recreate shooting scenes where people have died. They have arsons, where people have died, in like house fires, things like that. I can't remember all the details now, but it's just something that I feel like I could bring all that education back and I could teach it to our people. That way, if we do come across, a body, or because we deal with multiple deaths every month. A lot of them are natural deaths, but we treat each death like it's a homicide until we know different. And I feel like if you are able to recognize if something's a little bit off because of some training you had, I think that would, help open our eyes. Because imagine 30 years ago when, there could have been what you thought was a natural death, but at the time you didn't know or have the education that you might have today, and maybe something was overlooked. And so I'm just hoping that we have the knowledge to where something doesn't get overlooked,
And this would be training that really nobody in this area that I know of has this. And again, it's, it not only benefits Laclede County, Lebanon, but as I've often said about you, I've had to farm you out to other counties on multiple cases. This benefits this whole region if we have somebody with this training. And again, you may have received, or as I did, received training. I went through Major Crimes Investigator School and Major Case Squad training in 1997. Well, the game has changed. And if you don't keep up on that, you're going to lose valuable evidence and knowledge. And this Forensics Academy is going to provide that.
Yeah. Yes.
So if you want to fund this, one of the best ways to do that from a business standpoint, a corporate standpoint, if somebody's interested in that, the Sheriff's Office has the funds set up through the Lebanon Area Foundation in which you can dedicate your contribution to the Sheriff's Office, to the Forensics Academy for attendance. You're looking somewhere in the neighborhood of about $12,000.
Right. Yeah.
And so that would be an opportunity for somebody. And by the way, there's some tax credits involved in that if you make the donation to the Lebanon Area Foundation, and you can dedicate that money to that. But this is something this community really needs.
I feel like they do, yes. I think we could benefit from it. I live here. I'm part of the community, so I would like for us to have it, yes.
You know, that's interesting you say that. One of my first conversations with you, and I can remember I'm in the office, you come in this back, I can remember you're in your, back when we had the brown uniforms even. I
Oh,
could
the
even,
dark brown?
Yes,
Oh,
I can
gosh.
even remember that. So
Yeah.
this would have been in the first 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And you were still working the road because we didn't have enough people to send you to detectives, but you were doing some stuff. And I said something about your dedication, and your response to me is, this is my community.
It is. My kids go to school here, or they have once graduated. But my family, and I have, a huge family, and they're all from here. And it's important to us. If something was to happen to someone in my family or even to me, I would want, the deputies and the investigators, and I want them to have the education to do the right thing. And, it's just important.
See, this wasn't all that awful, was it?
It was horrible.
It was
Towards the end, it was good.
It was just me and you having a
Yeah.
conversation.
Towards the end, it wasn't bad.
Of the thousands of conversations that we've had. If you're interested in helping the sheriff's office in sending Casey to this forensics academy in the state of Tennessee, again, you have the opportunity as a corporate sponsor to go through the Lebanon Area Foundation to do that. Casey, thanks for the visit.
No, thank you.
I'm David Millsap on Lebanon Now. Thank you.